looks like I'm connected. Let's see if anyone shows up. If not, I'll just record this anyway and post it later as a video. I'll pin myself to the top corner when I start the slideshow. Ah, there's Boomy. Hey, Boomy, can you hear me? Let me know if the voice is coming through there, Boomy. Okay, awesome. Bit of a delay, bit of a lag. I like to keep the screen resolution as high as possible, so doing that requires the longest lag in response, which seems to be about 30 seconds, 20 seconds maybe. Nice, Casey the cat. Okay. Great, couple people, nice. Right, well, we'll just wait right till 7:30, so another 6 minutes it looks like. There, that should do it. Yeah, looks good. Yeah, I only posted this notification 4 hours ago, so can't really expect that many people to have noticed or made the time for it. That's okay. Figured that I would just record it anyway this way, and then it'll be just posted later anyway for people to watch. Another few minutes, just waiting till 7:30, then we'll start. I'd like to know who this third viewer is. We're going to talk about cosmology, the cosmology of existence in terms of ontological mathematics. So basically, why existence exists, why something exists rather than nothing. We're going to explain why anything is here at all. It's the cosmology of existence instead of the cosmology of the universe, of the physical universe, which is, basically studying the universe at large. This is studying existence at large and explaining why anything exists at all and what its structure is. Sound good? I try to keep an eye on the chat window, but when I'm in presentation mode for the PowerPoint, I can't see it, so I'll flip back every few minutes. Just about there. 2 more minutes. 1 more minute. Great. All right, we're just about there, guys. Might as well start. Close enough. People can back up anyway if they come on later. All right, good. So, ontological cosmology. What is 6 times 7? 42? What's that got to do with anything? So, the theory of existence, something versus nothing by myself, based on Mike Hockney's work with Illuminism and ontological mathematics, and my book, Illuminism. Perfect. So, let's start with a joke from Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So there was a planet of people, I forget who they were, but basically the idea is that there was a group of people, a planet, who wanted to know the answer to the life, universe, and everything, right? So they built this giant supercomputer called DeepMind, and this computer ran for, it was like 1,000 years, some really, really, really long time trying to figure out, some sort of AI computer, figure out the answer to life, the universe, and everything, and eventually it comes up with the answer 42. So then the people realized we didn't ask the right question about the universe, life, and everything. Maybe we don't understand the question. So they said, let's build a new computer, DeepMind 2, and we'll ask it, what is the question to the universe, life, and everything, right? So this computer ran again for some extremely ridiculously long time, and it came up with the question to the answer the question to the universe, life, and everything is what is 6 times 7? So I mean, this is a funny joke. This joke only makes sense in terms of ontological mathematics. And as I've speculated, I'm pretty sure Douglas Adams had met the Pythagorean Illuminati in some capacity, somewhere either in his dreams or astral traveling state or something like that, because that's a question you would only really ever come up with if you were familiar with ontological. I mean, that's a joke, a skit you would only ever come up with if you're familiar with ontological mathematics, and then it becomes funny. More recently, from a stand-up comedy routine by Pete Holmes. So I'll just read this to quote. This is his routine, well, one small part of it. Some people think that God created the universe. Some people think that nothing created the universe. Which is the funniest answer? The nothing people make fun of the God people and say that God doesn't exist. And I'm like, okay, maybe. But do you know what definitely doesn't exist? Nothing. That's the defining characteristic of nothing, is that it doesn't exist. So what are we talking about? Either you think it's God, something you can't see, touch, taste, photograph, and science can't prove, or you think it's nothing, something you can't see, touch, taste, photograph, and science can't prove. But I think that we can all agree that if your nothing sometimes spontaneously erupts into everything, that's a pretty goddamn magical freaking nothing, you guys. Ask the nothing people, what happens when you die? And they'll tell you, nothing. You go into nothing. And I'm like, you mean you merge back with your creator? That's heaven, bitch. So it works as a comedy routine, but between these two things, you actually have the answer to existence. Between these two jokes, you actually have it. It's embedded there, and maybe you don't see it or understand it yet, but by the end of this presentation, you should understand how basically this contains these two jokes, these two skits contain the answer to the universe and why anything exists at all. Awesome, Boomy. Cook and eat. Good stuff. What are you cooking? So, cosmology. In astronomy and physics, in science, the field of cosmology, it's the study of the nature of the universe at large, right? And the study of the Big Bang is a large part of cosmology. And then, of course, large-scale galactic structure across the entire cosmos that we can observe. Things like that, right? The cosmic microwave, background radiation, that sort of thing, right? Branch of astronomy that deals with the origin, structure, and space-time relationships of the universe. So it's physical cosmology. But we can also go to the cosmology of ontology, which is the study of existence itself. So it's the study of the nature and the order of existence itself, explaining why something exists rather than nothing. So this is like metaphysical cosmology, right? Studying existence logically, conceptually in and of itself, right? So the Venn diagram for existence, very simple. We have a circle, and it is existence, okay? Contains the entirety of every possible existent, right? Now, can anything exist outside of the main existence Venn diagram circle? Could you have an existence prime, so to speak? No, by definition, right? By definition, existence is the only existence. There's only one existence, okay? Contains the entirety of all possible things that could exist, okay? So there's no existence prime, right? There's a single circle Venn diagram which contains the entirety of existence, okay, by definition, right? So if nothing is outside of it, can it have been created? Can anything have created it? So the answer would have to be no, by definition. There's nothing outside of existence to create existence, by definition, right? So existence has to be self-creating or self-existent in some manner, right? Because there can't be anything outside of it to have created it, right? So the first principle of existence is that it was never created, and it is therefore eternal. So that's our first principle of existence. It was never created. Existence itself was never created. And that means that existence is eternal. Now, somebody asked me when I was doing some conjecture or some research on this online, someone posed the question, what do you mean by existence? I didn't think of that. I really needed to define that. But we can say principle zero. By existence, it is meant anything which is not null. That is, anything which is comprehensible, comprehensible, i.e. anything rational, right? And that really goes to Hegel's philosophy, where he said, it really summarizes a large part, right? Where he said that what is rational is real, and what is real is rational, right? So by existence, we mean anything which can be comprehended, anything, okay? So substance. What is it made out of? What is existence made out of? If existence was never created, then it cannot be made out of anything, can it? That's a pretty simple and consistent statement, isn't it? That would have to be the conclusion. If existence was never created, then it cannot be made out of anything. So let's summarize that as principle 2. Existence cannot be made of the result of any effort, because there's nothing outside of existence to expend effort to create existence, right? So existence cannot be made out of the result out of any effort. So what is the definition of that which requires no effort to exist, of that which was never created? How would you define that? It's a pretty simple definition, actually. It is principle 3. Existence is a substance of nothing. So existence was never created. It was never created out of the result of any effort, and it's eternal. Well, what's the only thing that can satisfy that? It's nothing. What is the definition of that which requires no effort to exist and which was never created? Nothing. Existence is a substance of nothing. Now, this seems like we're getting all screwed up, but it does work itself out. Principle 4 by corollary would simply have to say then that there is an infinite amount of existence, because how much nothing can you have? There's no limit to how much nothing you can have. There's no limit to how much nothing you can have, therefore there's an infinite amount of nothing. So there's an infinite amount of existence, defined as nothing. But we really got to figure out what this nothing thing is, because it kind of seems confusing maybe. So how can we understand principle 3, that is existence is a substance of nothing? How can we understand principle 3 in some mechanical logical manner beyond mere conceptualism, right? Now, since we are in the world of pure logical conceptualism, then math as such is a good way to show it, isn't it? Right? Because math is pure logical conceptualism, isn't it? Right? What is the most basic logical statement? I mean, in terms of, if you're familiar with Ayn Rand, you would say A equals A. But let's go to mathematics, since mathematics is independent of human language, right? You would say 1 equals 1. That's the most basic logical conceptual statement that you could possibly ever make. 1 equals 1, right? That's what math is. Any function in math reduces to 1 equals 1. And physics too. Did you know that? Like if you have Einstein's field tensors for general relativity. I should have showed some of these things, but they basically have something on the left equaling something complex on the right. That's just 1 equals 1, right? If you have the Fourier transform, something complex on the left equals something complex on the right. Like complicated, I mean, right? Or it could be complex valued literally, mathematically too, right? That's just saying that the thing on the left equals the thing on the right. Well, just divide out by those things, right? If you have 2 equals 2, divide out by 2, and you get 1 equals 1, right? That's what every single mathematical equation is. Every single mathematical equation is 1 equals 1. That is even the Schrodinger wave equation is 1 equals 1. Even though it has these complex and complicated parts to it, it's still saying this thing on the left is equal to the thing on the right. So it's still just saying 1 equals 1. So from 1 equals 1, you can develop all of mathematics. All of it. You would have to, right? Because if you have something so complicated like Euler's equations or the wave equation from quantum mechanics, since they're saying the thing on the left equals the thing on the right, it's just saying that 1 equals 1. It's saying the same thing. So therefore it implies that all of mathematics and all of physics can be worked out from 1 equals 1 because it's the same statement, isn't it? So isn't that interesting, right? So math as such is logical conceptualism. It's pure logical conceptualism, right? So what's one thing that comes out of math, of pure conceptual math? This equation. E to the I pi, e to the power of I times pi plus 1 equals 0. Okay? So that's an example of logical conceptualism. And what does it show? It shows principle 4. Operations, which you might call verbs, upon objects, which are nouns, can combine to be nothing. Okay? So the nouns here are the exponential constant, the imaginary constant number, pi is another constant, and 1, and the number 0. So those are nouns, and then the operations are the exponentiation here, the raising to the power, the multiplication between the I and the pi, and the plus, which also implies subtraction between the 1. Of course, the multiplication here also between the I and the pi implies division, right? And then the equality, right? So you have all of the operators of mathematics. So those are all of the operators of mathematics, right? And of course, the exponential constant itself implies calculus, because that's how you derive it. So you have operations, operations, right? All of the relevant operations of mathematics, all of them. That's all of them, right? Combining with objects, which just so happen to be constants of mathematics. You can combine those together and get nothing. Now that's pretty cool, isn't it? Because 0 is nothing, right? So that's really interesting because that's like how the laws of physics work, isn't it? You have mass, and then you have the laws of physics which operate upon those masses, right? Or you have electric charge, right? Electric charges, electrons and protons and things. And then you have the laws of physics, the laws of electrodynamics, which apply to that, right? So the pure logical conceptualism in math, showing that you can have all of the operations of math plus a few objects of numbers, those can combine in a special way to get nothing. So that's something equaling nothing. Isn't that interesting? But that something has to be composed of objects and operations upon those objects. Not just objects alone, not just operations or what we would call the laws of physics or the laws of mathematics on their own. It has to be a combination of the laws or the operations and the objects together. Together they can create nothing. Now that's just like the laws of physics where you have matter and the laws of physics is just like the reality, I mean, that we live in, right? Where you have the laws of physics and the objects that the laws of physics operate upon. That's an amazing, amazing connection there, isn't it? Right? That's showing that you can have this something of our world still being equal to nothing, something equaling nothing, right? So there, we're done it almost, right? We explained how something can come from nothing. And something can come from nothing if that something is composed of operations operating upon objects or laws operating upon objects, which is just like how the laws of physics work. Amazing. That's cool. That's really cool, right? So there, we've explained how something can come from nothing. One question, and this is a question which Plato and Aristotle addressed, and then the scholastics addressed as well, is if the world of the laws are separable from the world of the objects. Well, it's pretty clear here. It would have to be implied that it isn't quite separable, is it? The laws can't exist on their own, and the objects can't exist on their own. It's the laws operating together with the objects which exist together in operation, together in unison, which equal nothing, which allows you to have the something of those operations. Pretty neat. I'm just going to check the window over here. Homemade chicken tenders and curly fries. Very nice. Cool. So the first dialectic. Now, we still have a problem here. Why is there something rather than nothing? Nothing must be what the something of existence is still a contradiction, right? So nothing must be what the something of existence is a contradiction because you're saying something is nothing. Those are still kind of words in opposition to each other, opposite words, aren't they, right? So dialectical problem. Let's set it up as a dialectical problem. You have nothing versus something. So the thesis is nothing, right? It's well established that nothing has to be what existence is made out of. Versus the antithesis of something, because we know that we're live in something, right? So what's the synthesis between these two, between this pair, between this thesis and antithesis pair, right? So nothing is null, it's complete void, it's unreal, and it's completely empty, right? That's how you normally think of nothing. Something, however, would be being and completeness and totality and fullness and existent and solid and real, right? So the contradiction of nothing as a something of existence is resolved in what? It's resolved in this term we call becoming. Nothing becoming something, which means movement. It's resolved in movement, okay? So nothing, which is nothing, versus something, which is, the completion, those are resolved in movement. Nothing becoming something, which implies movement, okay? So that's principle 5 of existence. The manifestation of nothing as existence is motion. Cool. So, what can we say about this motion? How can we understand principle 5 about motion in some mechanical logical manner beyond mere pure logical conceptualism? Again, use mathematical conceptualism because mathematical conceptualism really is the language of logical conceptualism. It's the most pure and perfect logical conceptualism, right? And remember, Schopenhauer, for example, said, I think it was Schopenhauer, said that the tautology of mathematics, if we go back here, that the tautology of mathematics, 1 equals 1, was empty, meaningless. However, from that, from 1 equals 1, you can get this, right? Because this is still just saying 1 equals 1, isn't it? Because it's saying the thing on the left-hand side is the thing on the right-hand side. Well, in this case, it's 0 equals 0, right? Um, but instead of it being empty, tautology being empty, tautology ends up being completely full because look at, like that discussion we're having. What does tautology show us? The tautology of mathematics, it shows us that you can have operations or laws upon objects equaling nothing. You can have something in a very special way equaling nothing if that something is composed mathematically of objects and operations upon those objects or laws acting upon those objects. So I mean, so so instead of mathematics being empty tautology, it is it's what allows you to understand how something can come from nothing. Why existence should exist rather than nothing, right? Why anything exists rather than nothing. Cool. So motion again use mathematical conceptualism. So we'll use that this equation, e to the power is equals cosine s plus I sine s. So why that equation? Because it's algebraically complete. Because it's conceptually, because we're in the world of logical conceptualism, so we have to use something that's logically complete. This is a logically complete statement because it contains all possible numbers in a completely balanced way. Real and imaginary, positive, negative, etc., etc., right? It contains all possible numbers in a completely balanced and perfect way where no one number is privileged over any other, which gives you the balance to nothing, right? Uh, so then you would have to think of this equation as movement. This equation implies movement around this logically perfect, logically conceptually perfect circle, right? So that is your principle 6. So the fundamental unit of existence, motion, is e to the power is, or a particle movement following going around a circle in a complex plane following that equation. Okay, perfect. So universe is our universe. Now to our universe. Now let's try to throw our universe into how we have understood existence so far. So is our universe synonymous or identical with existence? So from physical cosmology, our universe seems to have had a beginning in the Big Bang event. Therefore, our universe cannot philosophically be identical with existence. So if we have this Venn diagram for existence, then our universe is a subset of existence. Existence precedes our universe, right? Existence must precede our universe since our universe has a beginning that we can tell from the Big Bang, but existence has to be eternal for the reasons discussed previously, right? So our universe is contingent and temporary, whereas existence is absolute and eternal. So can our universe be made of something different from existence? Of course, the answer would have to be no, otherwise it would be outside of existence. So whatever existence is made from has to be the same thing that is making up our universe, right? And we have determined what existence is made from already previously as that basic equation, circular equation. So principle 7, there is an order of existence outside of our physical universe that precedes our physical universe. And principle 8, our universe must be made of the same thing as existence. And this is going to be very relevant to science, I think, right up here in the next slide. So multiverse. Oh yeah, let's do the multiverse stuff. So multiverse. Can existence contain other universes? So here we have a universe with big letters and here a universe with small letters. So some different kind of universe, right? Or is existence full of our universe? And of course, that's related to the Greek and scholastic question of correspondence between soul and body and the argument between Plato versus Aristotle, whereas, if the forms were separate versus whereas they were integrated with existence, right? So physical cosmology from astrophysics indicates fine-tuning, this fine-tuning where the laws of physics, the constants rather of physics are very finely tuned, like the speed of light, the gravitational constant, Coulomb's law constant, the Coulomb constant, electrical charge constant, and then the what's called the what is that? I think it's called the Hubble constant, right? Or the cosmological, no, I think it's called the cosmological constant now. I don't think they call it the Hubble constant. I mean, maybe it's the same thing. I think now it's just generally called the cosmological constant. And anyway, it relates to the rate of expansion of space. Apparently, these things need to be very highly tuned to between something, like I've saw some scientists saying that it's as high as 1 part in 10 to the power 100 or 1 part in 10 to the 50. I mean, these are ridiculously finely tuned values, right? So one thing you would have to conclude then, given that scale, I mean, unless, of course you have to combine that scale with infinity because even 10 to the power 100 is negligible compared to the number infinity, right? So it's kind of hard to understand just precisely what we're talking about anymore at scales like that. But we can at least say that our universe is extremely, extremely, very highly finely tuned. We do know that. So, principle 9, other universes are either exceedingly similar. So if there are other universes, they're going to have to probably be very, very similar to our universe, just because the scale of the tuning required is just so fine. If you're going to have another universe, it's going to have to be like ours, or it's going to be so ridiculously different than ours. I use the term bluebiverse here. So we have universes which are, operate like our universe. They're going to have to be extremely similar. Or you have something else that's just so completely different, it's not even comprehensible. You just call it a bluebiverse rather than a universe. Okay. So who knows? I mean, that's kind of an unknown, actually. So similar universes could theoretically interact. However, the universe and bluebiverse could not. You couldn't even have a conversion program between the two, because a bluebiverse wouldn't even contain things like protons and neutrons, and wouldn't even have like electrical fields, electric charges, gravity. It wouldn't have anything like what we have. But then it's a question as to whether or not that's even possible to manifest. But then even if it is possible, it's just so irrelevant to our existence. I mean, who knows, right? We'll continue on this question. So sequential, given that our universe had a beginning, it is therefore contingent and will have an end. Therefore, there can be other universes before and after our current universe. So this would be sort of the cyclic universe model, right? So there we see them coming in, right? One after the other. So principle 10, there can be other universes before and after ours. But in the context of the Venn diagram of existence, this might be equivalent to contemporaneous multiverses anyway, where they all exist together at once. Or do they exist, sequentially, because there's only one universe that can happen at a time? I mean, these are questions which aren't really resolved. We can say principle 11, our universe is likely big enough for us. The position taken by Hockney and the Pythagorean Illuminati is that it would be simplest and highly statistically likely that our universe is the only possible one, and that you have a basic temporal sequence of one universe to the next universe to the next universe playing out. So structure in physics. So the fundamental unit of existence, as we discussed earlier, is this equation, this perfect equation, this logically perfect, this logically conceptually perfect equation, which balances all possible numbers in a perfectly consistent way in a circle in movement around a circle, right? So generalizing, you would have any possible circle size and any number of instances and phases. So it would actually become this equation. This is just the simplest way to write it, but in general, it would look something like this. And this just means that you can have any kind of circle size and any phase of the points going around the circles. The thing about that, so still that's just coming from logical conceptualism, right? But now we go to the real universe, and if we combine infinite combinations, and there would have to be an infinite number of these because these reduce to nothing, right? And how much nothing can you have? We can have an infinite amount of nothing. But the thing is, if you combine infinite combinations of these via Fourier transform mathematics, given desired local boundary condition modulations, things like that, that's the basis of quantum mechanics. That's how quantum mechanics works. So we've went now from pure logical conceptualism, and remember earlier we had that slide saying that the universe must be made of the same thing that existence is made of. So existence is made out of these circles and an infinite number of them. And then it just so happens that now we know from modern quantum mechanics, this is a wave equation, and you combine those wave equations with this operation called Fourier transform mathematics, and that's the basis of the wave theory of the Schrodinger wave equation of quantum mechanics, which is the equation that describes the state, right, of all matter and energy in the universe, right? So isn't that a cool connection? So we've explained why our universe has a wave equation. It has a wave equation. Our universe has a wave equation. Quantum mechanics exists as a wave equation. And quantum mechanics explains reality and energy and matter with a wave equation because the universe has to be made of the same thing as existence is made out of. And existence is this wave equation, right? So now we have perfect correspondence between metaphysics, philosophy, and modern science. And that's never happened before in the history of science. This is a first time this happened with Hockney's work and my presentation of it here. So pretty awesome, pretty amazing, right? So, principle 13, ontological cosmology, mathematics explains the basis of our physical universe, matter and energy wave equation. And that ties back to that question about the blue-reverse. Maybe the blue-reverse variation is not possible. Maybe the only thing that this structure of existence can do, if it's going to create a physical universe, is manifest things like electrons and protons, because that's the only way that this energy, these circles of energy, right, these frequencies can combine. That's the only thing that they can do is transform from frequencies and circles of movement into things that look like particles. But then it's still the question of fine tuning, because you still have the electric charge constant. So why is the electric charge the value that it is? And why is the speed of light the value that it is? So you still have those questions. So we're not completely out of the woods yet with the fine tuning problem. But we still have made some progress. So tuning. So even if existence is full of our universe, existence still logically precedes our universe, right? So there is still an order of existence which precedes our universe. And of course, our physical universe. And of course, if you are familiar with the occult at all and have read any books, or have read near-death experiences, yeah, there's people out there who will tell you straight up, no, and just as the Hockney writers do, oh yeah, no, our universe, what we perceive as our physical universe, that is not the full the full deal. There's a lot more. There's a whole other existence out there outside of what we perceive as our 3D physical universe, right? Then it becomes kind of like a question of I'll get into it later, but you can, not to think of it negatively, but I'm just saying it's kind of like a matrix situation. We're here in this universe doing whatever we're doing, but really there's an order of existence where we came from. Well, now I'm talking about us and where we came from. Actually, we haven't got to that point yet. So you're saying, why are you saying we came from existence? Well, we'll get into that, okay? So does existence have to be coincident with a universe given the extreme statistical improbability of tuning? Or does existence choose the conditions of our and possible other universes among infinite possibilities, the tunings which work? Or does existence create other universes with the same tuning? So these questions sort of establish a contrast between conscious God design, like is a God designing these universes with the constants that they have and the tuning that they have, or is there a natural inevitability and as to what the values have to be and they can't be any other way, right? So this is kind of like an ontological theology versus an ontological atheism question. It's the same question that we have been dealing with for millennia, and which still exists in modern times, right? How do you explain the fine tuning? Is it evidence of mind at work, a grand mind, or is it just random probability, as scientists say, or is it the only way it can possibly be? So mind, what about mind? So remember principle 5, the manifestation of nothing as existence is motion, okay? But motion in and through and as what exactly, right? So the motion is in ontological numbers, right? These logically conceptual perfect balance of numbers, right? So it's ontological numbers. Okay, that's what this motion is through. Okay, through ontological numbers, in ontological numbers. So it's in ontological numbers, through ontological numbers. Okay, as logical conceptualism, as pure logical conceptualism, right? So what does that imply? That means it's through or as mind or awareness or comprehension, consciousness, what we summarize from Hockney as just the term ontological mathematics, which implies mind. So that's what the movement is as. It's as thought. That's the only thing it can be, right? It's ontological numbers, it's through numbers, it's as thought. That's what base existence is. So P14, principle 14, so existence is mental, a substance of mind. So this movement, this base movement of nothing as existence, is base thought. It's basic thought. It's because it's all logical conceptualism. Well, where does logical conceptualism exist, right? We've done this all via logical conceptualism. So to be self-consistent, it has to be in logical. Where's the only place that logical conceptualism can exist? It can only exist in thought. That's the only thing it can be, right? And of course, thought is, you can't touch thought, can you, right? Where is thought, right? Remember Leibniz said, go into the brain and analyze its levers and its pedals, and you still wouldn't find mind. You would just see levers and pedals, but that actually wouldn't be the mind itself, would it, right? So I mean, mind being kind of nothing that you can actually taste, touch, smell, photograph, right? Being nothing like that guy's skit from the beginning, it works. It's self-consistent, right? So there's no problem here identifying it with mind. It is self-consistent because we're in the world of pure logical conceptualism. Where can pure logical conceptualism exist? It can only exist in mind. Great. So existence. So as a corollary of that, principle 15, existence must be fully conscious. Given that existence is eternal, it must be fully conscious. What else would it be? It would just define consciousness, right? It would define consciousness. So, but tuning. So, given that existence is fully conscious mind, does existence have to be coincident with the universe? Given the extreme statistical improbability of tuning, there's only one possible tuning, no freedom for mind to choose. In which case, it's kind of like, well, what relevance is mind? It's still mind. It just doesn't have the freedom to choose. Or does mind existence choose, as a sort of God, choose the conditions of our and possible other universes among infinite possibilities, the tunings which work? Mind has freedom to choose and explore any tuning in any universe it might want to create inside existence, since it is fully conscious God and has the ability to do that, to set those tunings. But as we know, if you want a universe anything similar to ours, it has to be extremely similar to ours, any other universe that we could possibly comprehend, given the scale of the tuning, just the ridiculous fineness of the tuning. Any other universe that we could possibly comprehend would have to be almost basically identical to ours. And that would correspond with a cyclic universe where you have universe after universe. Each universe has a different local history. Not the same things happen from universe to universe because, our sun wouldn't have formed or something else. The matter would do random different things, right? Or maybe you have a bluebiverse, which is such a completely different state that we wouldn't even comprehend it. There wouldn't even be protons or neutrons. It wouldn't even be thermal. Like who knows? But then again, maybe there's only one way that the substance of existence in that motion circle that can only do one thing and create things like our universes. But then still, like I said, you still have the question of why can you make things that are similar to our universe and have the same basic laws of physics but slightly changed values of the Coulomb constant or the gravitational constant. The indications are no, you wouldn't be able to do that. There's only one way that those can be to get our universe. Um, so does existence create other universes with the same tuning? So you can have sequential similar universes versus contemporaneous similar universes. It's essentially identical in terms of the Venn diagram of existence. You have, this could be 1, 2, and 3, or they're all just existing at the same time separately, but because they're separate conceptually, right? They don't have to be separate temporally. This is, from T1 to T2, and then this one is from T2 to T3, and then this one is from time 3 to time 4. They're separated conceptually, right? So, I mean, what difference does it really make in the end, right? So the Pythagoreans, however, from Hockney, they suggest the latter option, manifesting sequentially. They suggest that would be in accordance with Occam's razor, least action, parsimony, the simplest possible solution. That existence is full of a single universe, and you go from one universe to the next universe to the next universe, sort of sequentially, although that's really not too different from conceptually just having all the universes together at the same time in terms of, the concept of existence itself. So, principle 16, let's just say this. Our universe is extremely finely tuned, possibly by a mind. We certainly know that existence is made of mind. Existence is out there as mind. Our universe is created by that mind. And we'll get into for what purpose. The question is how much attention to detail do you have to put into a universe in setting the constants? Probably a lot. It looks like a lot because it's so statistically unlikely, or that's just the only possible way that it can be, and that's why the statistics are so ridiculous. Because, yeah, that's a good point actually. If there was for some logical ontological reason only one possible way that existence could manifest a universe, then, well, yeah, when you solve that problem, you're going to get extremely tight constraints because you're looking, it's basically how many different ways can one be one? And you'd be like, one can only be the number one by 1 part in 10 to the power of 100, like that number we saw earlier. It'd be some ridiculously insane value that one could be anything different than one. It would just be impossible. And something impossible would look like, a possible variation of 1 part in 10 to the power of 100, just because that's such a mind-bogglingly impossibly small number, right? So that we find the tuning to be to that scale kind of indicates, yeah, that there's only one possible way for it to manifest. And then perhaps our tuning question isn't even the correct question. We'll find that the tuning actually comes out of uh, the properties of ontological mathematics itself. Because I've remarked, I think in my book or someplace, that the laws or the constants of physics seem like they're irrational numbers. They're numbers with repeating decimal places that don't end. And so, of course, we have mathematical constants like that. For example, the exponential constant and pi and the golden ratio. They're all numbers like that. They're these crazy irrational transcendental numbers that have, infinitely repeating decimal places. And so perhaps it's just a matter of the the ontological, and so those numbers come out of mathematics by themselves just by analyzing the variations of how you can make up 1 equals 1. You eventually find that pi will pop out of that and the exponential constant will pop out of that, right? These crazy numbers with infinite decimal places. And so maybe it just ends up that it's those numbers which translate somehow into making the laws of physics. And so it looks like, wow, our laws of physics are so highly finely tuned, they should be impossible, and therefore it indicates, either, a mind doing it. But like I said, perhaps it's not the right question to look at it that way. It's just the value that they have to be, just like the exponential constant or pi has to be the value that is. And if you're asking the question, how much can the value of pi change? You would say, well, the value of pi can't change. The value of pi has to be exact. And if you were to put an estimate on it, you'd be like, the value of pi can't change by like 1 part in 10 to the power 100, or else it wouldn't be pi anymore, right? Or even less than that, right? Um, so maybe that explains the tuning problem, but we haven't gotten that far yet in translating our metaphysical ontological mathematics to the laws of physics. Although we have made some progress, as I said, in identifying that our universe still has to be made of the same thing as existence. Existence is this motion through this circle equation, and that is actually the structure of quantum mechanics. So at least we have that answered now. Okay, so existence units. If one unit of all possible these equations can exist, then any number of them can exist because it's just nothing, right? So principle 17, existence is composed of of infinite complete mental units which are each fully conscious. So yeah, so this would be a unitary um, complete mental unit. If you take all possible variations of this, then you get, this sort of disc shape with all possible circle sizes and all possible phases. So you get a unit of that, and one unit of that is a complete set of thoughts. So a unit that is a complete set of thoughts you would call a God. But the thing is, you can have an infinite number of those because they're still all nothing. So if one can exist, then any number of them can exist, right? And so instead of calling it God, you call it souls, and they're all of our souls. These are each a soul. They're called a monad. Leibniz called them monads, right? And since they're a conglomeration or a collection of all possible thoughts, each individually, then you would have to say that they are each individually a God and each individually fully conscious. So that's the base structure of existence as well. Okay, so principle 18 now, existence is not a unitary consciousness, but would be composed of many conscious units. Each of these is a soul called the monad. That's what our soul is. So what about purpose? So we have existence, which is which precedes the universe, and then we have the universe, something created by existence, right? So if eternal existence is composed of what must be fully conscious units, then what is the purpose of a universe? The only possible role for a universe is therefore to be unconscious. But why? I just want to see if you guys have said anything. Don't think the universe is expanding or that it had a beginning. I think the multiple universe had a... Yeah, I know. Lots of good questions for sure. Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm covering it as well as I can. So existence is composed of units of consciousness, right? An infinite number of them. So why create a universe? So if that's what existence is, if existence is fully conscious units, right? The only possible role for a universe is to be unconscious, to explore unconscious. Why? As fully conscious entities, the only thing to do would be to explore unconsciousness. That's the only possible thing. If existence in and of itself preceding the universe is composed of, I mean conceptually, not temporally preceding, but conceptually preceding the universe, um, is composed of what you could only define as fully conscious units and an infinite number of them, then the only possible thing to do that's different than that would be to explore unconsciousness. So you create a universe to be unconscious. Okay? That's what universes are created for, to explore unconscious. But the inevitable result of exploring unconscious is to once again become fully conscious. And of course, that you remember how much Hockney talked about Carl Jung, and what did Jung always say? Right, exploring the conscious is what the unconscious is what develops consciousness, right? So exploring unconsciousness, that's the purpose of our universe. You go into universe and you become unconscious, and you redevelop consciousness by exploring unconsciousness. That's the inevitable result. You cannot not explore unconsciousness and not become conscious. That's the entire result of exploring unconscious, is to become conscious, right? So, principle 19, your purpose in the universe is to become conscious. And of course, in one of the last books from Hockney, or I forget where he said this. Anyway, just making the point that the test of existence is not how faithful you are, not how much you worship, right? The test of existence is consciousness, is intelligence. Existence is an intelligence test, not a worship test, right? Existence is not a worship test. Existence is not a faith test. Existence is not a blind belief test. Existence is an intelligence test, right? Basically, right? I mean, it's not even a test. It's just, I mean, if you want to put it in those terms, it's just an exploration of consciousness, okay? Or of unconsciousness to become conscious. I guess you would call that gnosis, as far as gnosis goes, and escaping the unconscious reincarnational cycle, which we would seem to be trapped in, or stuck in, or trapped, stuck, or involved in this universe. To escape that, that's the intelligence test. Once you have a sufficient comprehension of the nature of your existence, then you escape that reincarnational cycle through gnosis. Some people can achieve it while waking. Most people achieve it at death or after death. Um, and then you escape the reincarnational cycle, and then I suppose that means you can rejoin conceptual existence outside the universe. So creator. So existence has no creator. It is eternal. A universe is created by units of existence, i.e., by the monads, by us together. Brings up a question: could a single monad create its own universe? That might be pointless, like playing checkers with yourself. So it seems to be that monads get together to do this process together. There's not just one soul in this universe, there's a whole lot. So principle 20, the universe is created by monads so that they can explore on consciousness together and become conscious again. So that's why the universe is created. It's created by the monads, by existence. Existence is composed of an infinite number of monads, souls. So souls create the universe in order to explore on consciousness. Why? Because there's nothing else to do. Basically, that's it. So, manager. So, while monads are unconscious inside a universe, would something need to manage the operations upon the objects to ensure a stable reality, especially given the extreme tuning which appears to be required? So, if so, one could identify such an entity with Plato's demiurge, or possibly somewhat with Abraham's God I am. Effectively, that entity becomes a creator of the universe, but it used the energy from our monads to do so, and at our direction and discretion, and then manages things. So apparently we created a program to do that for us, to manage the laws of physics for us while we are in this universe. That is the apparent story which comes out of occultism, and also from my own research and involvement with people involved with this who've assisted me in, having esoteric and occult experiences and communications, right? So it seems that yes, we did create as monads, as God monads in the eternity of existence. We created a program, an entity, to manage the universe for us while we go in it, to manage the laws of physics for us, and to watch over the operations while we're in it. Very interesting, right? So, principle 21, the universe apparently has a manager. It does call itself I am, whether or not that's the same entity from the Bible. It may or may not be. It's been a bit quiet on that. I know that sounds so crazy. Um, this entity does not require worship, although it may have communicated this idea to us in the past in order for us to explore unconsciousness for the purpose of developing consciousness. Because think of how much time and mental expenditure we have spent. If you look at the European intellectual tradition and how much thought was spent on the idea of worship and the idea of a God and a creator and all that, there was a lot of exploration of unconsciousness, right? So maybe that entity did do that on purpose and be like, oh, that bastard, that son of a bitch, giving this idea of Abraham and all that, and worshiping gods. But look at all of the intellectual development it generated, which corresponds to exploration of unconsciousness, right? Of course, it could have been done a different way. You could add a Greek or Pythagorean or a pagan approach to that. Ended up that humans did it this way, for better or worse. It seems that there was still at least an intellectual tradition that was loosely tied to that, or pushing off that at least, to try to figure out what was the true nature of existence, because a lot of philosophers obviously weren't happy with this idea that existence reduces to worship, right? So endpoint. So a unit of all of instances of these circles is an entity of all possible thought, fully conscious. So that's this little diagram here. That's what your monad looks like. So this is how you define God, but it is your soul, your monad. There's no single unitary God. There is no one God, right? There's an entity that manages a universe, but it's like the Higgs field or whatever you want to call it. It's just like managing the laws of physics. It doesn't care about us. It doesn't care about having our worship or attention or anything like that. It's just doing its thing, running the laws of physics of the universe, right? There is no single creator God. What there is an infinite number of monads, which are each individually a God, and when they go into a universe, they have the potential of they become unconscious going into a universe, and then they have the potential of redeveloping consciousness, redeveloping gnosis, and achieving full consciousness, and then leaving that universe again, right? So that's how God would be defined, but it's your soul, your monad, and there's an infinite number of them. So inside the universe, these entities lose total consciousness, but become fully conscious again as a result of exploring unconsciousness. So principle 22, monads in the universe were gods and will inevitably become so once again. And that's why the test of existence, what your purpose here to do is to become conscious, because obviously that's how you define God, right? Is a fully conscious entity. So that's what your role is to do here, as you are yourself a monad, a soul in this universe. That's your purpose here. So meaning becoming fully conscious, not worshiping for eternity. So, is it good? And factor X. So is becoming conscious and God good? As Leibniz said, it is the best of all possible worlds. It is the only possible world. That's the only possible purpose of a universe. And it is good because that's the only possible thing that a soul has to do for eternity. A soul exists eternally. Your soul, your monad, is an eternal, indestructible entity. It has existed forever. What does it have to do for infinite time? Okay? The only thing greater than being God is going into a universe and becoming God. And that's the only possible thing you could ever result in. That's the only possible thing that can ever happen to you. Given enough time. Obviously, in the short term, a bunch of crap can happen, right? But in the long term, the only possible thing, and of course, put this in the context of eternity, of the eternity of your soul, right? The only possible thing that can happen, you go into this universe, from its perspective, you come right back out, right? Because it lives eternally going into the universe for 15 billion years. That's nothing, right? So the only thing that can happen to you over the long term is to become God again. So it's the greatest entertainment now. Of course, if you know me, you know that I can come up with some extremely cynical and negative and dark takes. So I'll try not to do that here now. But yeah, you can come up with some pretty cynical takes about that, and complain to God about to you, but you're just complaining to yourself. You're just complaining, why did I choose to do this effectively, right? Anyway, so the exploration of unconsciousness means the exploration of irrationality, unreasoning, emotionalism, general evil, retardation, etc., etc., etc. Of course, this is why Plato developed the Republic and wanted to have a society led by, philosopher kings, rational people to create a just, nice society that would at least made this universe a nice place to live in, rather than the shit show we've had with democracy and everything almost everywhere since, and certainly in modern times with the complete retardation and idiocy we have to live with, right? It would be nice to just make this world a nicer place. On the other hand, since we're here to explore unconsciousness, maybe it does have to be stupid and retarded, because that's the only possible way to explore unconsciousness. So I don't know. It's kind of a toss-up which way you're actually supposed to go. Maybe you are supposed to make it hell here. Make having it hell here, that's the best way to explore unconsciousness. But it's not fun. I don't know. Is it supposed to be fun? I don't know. Don't let me start getting too cynical on it, right? Yeah, there's nothing really. There's no. So yeah, that's kind of something that people aren't going to like. There's no God out there that cares. But although other people say no, there actually is. The connection to your higher self is that part of you which is the pre-existent part outside of this universe that you're still connected to, and it is basically a God form, and it does care about you because yeah, if we go back to this diagram, so you are here, so this is you, right? This bunch of circles, and you're inside this universe, but it's actually just the inside part. So Hockney implies that it's just like, say, sorry, not the inside part. It's actually the outside part. So these widest circles, the largest circles are actually the only part of your soul that go in the universe, go inside the universe, and then your inner part stays out here in pre-existence, outside the universe. So this inner part of you stays fully conscious. The outer part of you goes inside the universe to play this game of forgetting itself and becoming conscious again. So this inner part of you has a total vested interest in what's happening to itself, because it's to you, because you are itself. You are the outer circlings on the outside. So it does totally have a vested interest in what is happening to you inside the universe, and it does want to help you. And a lot of people who tune into synchronicity, those ideas, start to see the presence of what would be, how you might call it God, the universal God, but it's really the connection to your own monad, right? Because your own monad, your own inner self, is outside here, and it can look inside the universe and do things for you, and like at least watch you. And yeah, some people say it does love you, and it does want the best for you, and it loves you incredibly, right? There would be nothing wrong really with saying all that. That's maybe a nice idea, right, for people who want love. And even me, as cynical and hard-hearted as I am, yeah, I'll accept that. I mean, I can't say it does much for me emotionally, but it's still a nice idea, and maybe it's like, maybe get used to that idea a little bit more and be like, yeah, maybe it's not so bad. Your inner soul, inner monad is out here in existence looking in, and does want the best for you. You could go with that, and it works, and that seems to be implied from occultism. The idea that Christ is within, your inner soul is within you. You are these outer circles. Those are the parts that go in the universe and forget itself. But the inner part of you, you're still connected to it conceptually. It's just outside. It can't go in the universe, so it's just outside in this pre-existent part. Anyway, so really fun stuff to think about, right? So yeah, but what about factor X? What do we mean by factor X? Factor X, despite explaining existence, you may have missed something or don't know something crucial which changes everything. It's always a possibility. Despite explaining existence, what seems we have a fully consistent system here now for explaining existence. Can't be any possible way we've totally logically conceptually explained it all now. Possibly it doesn't actually still explain the human condition, and we could exist for other reasons. Maybe we're not part of the natural order in some fashion. We're created for something else, right? And it doesn't disallow the worst possible mistakes and horror from existing. I mean, maybe not. Who knows, right? There's certainly, if you read books on like good books, good quality books on magic and occultism, you come across this concept frequently, that humans are created for another purpose. I don't know if I should get into it, but we're created basically as an energy transfer system for transferring energy. Some people say that is bad. It means that we're being used as a food conduit, a food source for another race of beings. Others say no, it's all normal. It's just an energy transfer uh, that's healthy and good, and there's nothing wrong with it. Um, so who knows? The occultists know, the people who do regular astral travel and a lot of forms of the magic people in books, they do know and they do write about it. Um, but whether it's good or bad, I don't know. So we'll just leave that there. So human condition. In the animal world, there's a dialectical contest between certain classes of species. For example, herd, parasite, and predator, right? So caribou and parasites that infested caribou, and then wolves, which remove the parasite-infested caribou, right? So that's a dialectical problem. So the thesis is the herd, the antithesis is the parasite, the synthesis is the predator, right? So the predator um, is the higher solution, the synthesis, and then the predator obviously removes the parasites from the herd, right? So as above, so below, this has an analog on the mental spiritual dimension. So thesis would be information, antithesis would be lies, synthesis would be truthful comprehension. So the herd, you can think of it this way, collects the basic energy and info. The parasite steals the energy and info. The predator determines which of the herd and information are true by putting it to the test. So principle 23. Yeah, so now we're getting away from metaphysics. Now I just sort of am trailing off and having some fun with the end of this. Okay, so be like the wolf. The wolf seeks out and determines truth. So mental evolution, Myers-Briggs personality type indicator, as above, so below. Just as with physical evolutionary branching, the same is expected for mind. You should expect the same for conscious rational mind, or for conscious mind. So this is the Myers-Briggs personality type indicator variations. They're not all conducive to mental rational survival, right? Many MBTI types are mental evolutionary dead ends, just like you have physical dead ends, physical evolutionary dead ends, species which just, met a cul-de-sac and couldn't fit into the niche, couldn't survive, and they've gone extinct, right? That's going to happen with mental personality types as well. And right now there's 16 that exist, and they're all sort of being put to the test now. And there's only going to be a few, I think, which survive. There's going to be a lot which are mental personality type dead ends, which aren't going to be able to survive. So types which succumb, especially the ones which succumb to parasitism and lies and irrationality, they're going to be evolutionary dead ends mentally, spiritually. For example, the sensing thinking types, which are your scientists, your scientific materialists. As I've proven and demonstrated in my other work on the climate, these ones are totally self-destructive. They're now scheming a plan to end themselves, to destroy all life on Earth. Like, talk about an evolutionary cul-de-sac in mind, right? It's so bad that it would have caused the total extinction of all life on Earth if I hadn't have caught it. And they may still get away with what they're trying to do. I hope that we can stop them. I hope that my work is going to help contribute to stopping them. But this is going to have to be a personality type which the mental realm, soul monad realm, halts, stops incarnating, stops using, because it's so freaking dangerous. It's not just dangerous to itself, it's dangerous to all life, the entire planet. So it's going to have to stop. We're simply not going to be able to allow those personality types. I mean, on the spiritual reincarnational realm, whatever forces are in control of that, monitoring that situation, they're going to have to simply stop that mind set from incarnating again, because it's self-destructive, right? Um, so your scientific materialists, your IFLS types, and midwits. Midwits are parasites. In fact, in Planet Wars, as you know, I discussed the midwits somewhat at length. The midwits themselves are the parasites. Um, so the sensing feeling types. So your typical worshiper. Um, Perhaps they just achieve pointless death because they assume that someone else can do the work for them. They assume that Jesus, I mean, it's a nice idea. Jesus is going to save me and give me gnosis, and that's all I got to do is believe in it. Well, what if it's a totally empty belief and you've just completely wasted a life of potential rational intellectual development because you put off what is your own responsibility for gnosis, and you put that responsibility off onto someone else, but it's just a big freaking joke and it gets you nothing, and it's just some sort of parasitical force that's just doing that to you and tricking people to feed off their mental energy or something, right? So who knows? Be great if you could just believe in something and that's it. You achieve gnosis, become a god, and that's it. But it could also just be the most pointless thing ever because you didn't actually do any work, did you? Right? And that's, of course, the whole Calvinism thing, right? are you saved by faith or by works, right? That's the huge debate in Christianity, right? Are you saved by faith or by works, right? And that, I don't know, you tell me. I don't see how it's a nice idea, but honestly, I've never been attracted to the idea of being saved by faith. Even as a child, I went to private Christian school, and I can't say at any time in my childhood from K to 8 was I ever interested. Did I ever find it? And I was in a Christian school, born and raised, and at no time did I ever find it all that interesting. The idea of being saved by faith. I don't know why. I just didn't. That's just how I was a kid. Of course, I had a crazy childhood, but um, Christianity just never drew me, even as I was when I was a child. Of course, on the other hand, for people who've been around a while, you know that the idea of being saved by works also pisses the hell pisses me off to no end because I'm like, why the hell am I here? This place is awful, right? So anyway, um, so principle 24, it ends up being that the INTJ slash P, and there's a few related personality types. They're the best information wolves. They'll be the ones likely who are selected by the reincarnational process to be the minds which continue to exist and continue developing consciousness and comprehension, self-comprehension, consciousness, and development and becoming into the future. These other ones will be evolutionary cul-de-sacs. They won't be used anymore. The INTJ slash P and closely related supporting types will be the ones who go into the future to create a what we will hopefully finally be able to achieve. With Plato's Republic and beautiful, wonderful worlds of just a bit less retardation. We won't have to explore such depths of mental retardation and idiocy anymore. We will have hopefully grown out of that sort of phase. Great. So, what about an Illuminist spirit animal? Let's have an Illuminist spirit animal. Well, you know what it is, right? Let's see. Okay, I've missed a bunch of stuff. Well, I'll just come back. I'm almost done. Now I'll come back to your comments. Okay, guys? All right, so Illuminist spirit animal. So I bet you guys know what that's going to be, right? Illuminist spirit animal. What's it going to be, guys? I already referenced it. It's going to be, no, wait. Can you guys guess? Yeah, let's do this. What's the Illuminist spirit animal? What would I choose for a spirit animal? While you guys are answering that, I'll look back at some of the things you guys were saying. Yeah, so Bumi's saying he's a cold, hard materialist. Yeah. Yeah, it can be nihilism inducing and depressing. Well, man, you should spend more time with me in Illuminism because, yeah, that's absolutely, I mean, man, I've been so nihilistic and depressed. Coming to terms with the reality of this situation, but it's getting better slowly for me. Have you investigated mathematical idealism? Yeah, especially the Pythagorean Illuminism variety. Yes, instead of mathematical materialism. Exactly. Do the flaws of materialism not bother you? I would imagine magical thinking. Yeah, right. But we're not just doing magical thinking, right? I've laid out the logical conceptualism for all of this, right? So it's not just we're not just making things up here, right? We're justifying things, right? And certainly we're not reverting to worship and silly things like that are just made up. We're given a logical grounding. Okay, don't know what the spirit animal is. It's the wolf, of course. The wolf seeks out truth practically, right? Because it puts to the test who's lying, which means who's full of parasites, and who's true, which means who's healthy, right? That's the basic test that the wolf applies to the caribou herd, right? Who's lying, who looks good but has a body full of parasites versus who looks good and is good, right? Let's run you down and test. That's the base. That's what the wolf does, right? The wolf is the dialectical synthesis, right? Puts appearances to the test to determine truth, destroys destroys lies, improves the herd, improves reason, is social, just, serious but playful, exposes parasites, lies, and eradicates them. Deadly, it can take down enemies many times larger than itself. It exemplifies meritocratic principles. That's a big one. Wolves are meritocratic. Wolves don't go for equality, they test for inequality, and they recognize and they don't mind that other wolves might be more capable than them. And if they are, they put them at the top, and there's no problem with that from a wolf's point of view. Very rational, right? Very, very rational, meritocratic thing to do. Typically a northern species, which of course connects them to the Hyperborean idea, Hyperborean Illuminati idea, right? From the north, obviously European, right? Correspondent with the European intellectual tradition, right? They're just a great species that represents the European intellectual tradition and meritocracy and all that sort of stuff. I think a wolf is a great spirit animal. Don't you? But if we're gonna have a spirit animal, why not have a spirit plant? What's a good Illuminist spirit plant? No one does spirit plant. Everyone has spirit animal. Why not have spirit plant? I'm just having fun here and trailing off now. Why not the dandelion? Follows the sun. The sun obviously is the light, the truth, right? Thrives anywhere, cannot be easily eradicated, improves the soil for the herd. Dandelions actually are really good for your soil, apparently. They reach for the sky, they have airborne seeds. That's pretty cool. They fly, right? Wow. Everyone hates it, but it's actually the best. So, yeah, why not the dandelion be that spirit plant? And the wolf is spirit animal. How's that? Cool, right? It's cool to me. So, what you should do, you should read my book, Illuminism. Understand food and eat what you should. Keep fit, have children, and educate them yourself. Eat raw fruits and veggies and organic meat and organs. Improve your pet from ruminants. Ruminant animals are apparently the best meat. That's the meat that you want from ruminant animals. That means, what does that mean? Animals with multiple stomachs, right? Isn't that what that means? Yeah. Ruminants. That's what you want. Ruminant meat and raw veg. Basically raw veg. Not even the fruit you need so much. You can every now and again. Um, but lots of raw veg and organic ruminant meat and organs. Improve your pedigree. That means improve your breeding. Use alternative non-parasitical currency. Develop financial wealth for yourself. Yeah, I mean honestly, that's the way the world is. Just you have to. If you want power, you have to get rich. Spend time in clean air in the mountains and in nature. Ground your feet. Disbelieve in the impossible. Right? That suspension of disbelief problem. Be superior. Learn everything. But since we're exploring unconscious, are you supposed to be ascetic or are you supposed to be totally hedonistic, right? Which actually gives you the better exploration of unconsciousness. Being ascetic kind of might mean you just don't do everything. Being totally hedonistic might mean you are too disruptive to society. So maybe it's a balance between those two. Well, that's why the Illuminati talk a lot about sex for salvation, and then the holidays for such things where such exploration can have an outlet, right? So that it's not disruptive to society, referencing Saturnalia and other such holidays and events, and doesn't mean it has to be lewd or totally gross or anything. It's just a day to let loose or whatever holidays. Imagine not having marriage holidays. I don't wonder how that would go off, right? What if you had marriage holidays, right? but society wide, right? Like maybe that's what you need to do for marriage. I don't know. Maybe that's what Saturnalia was basically, right? So do not use parasitical systems such as pharmacare, and especially not their shots. God, I mean, we've all had them a little bit, but my God, if you have children, do not give them any of those things. Do not, right? Do not give them public education. And don't vote. Voting is so retarded. It's so insulting. Voting is so freaking retarded. The way that it's done now in democracy. Use parasitical currency. Don't be overweight. Don't be fat. Not good to be fat. Of course, most people have been so damaged by shots and drugs and other things and just the toxic food supply that, truly they can't actually help it. You can start helping it by, you have to understand what you're eating and that you're ingesting toxins which are making your body react that way. Some people may have simply damaged their body so badly that there's no recovery for them. So sucks to be them. But a lot of people probably can correct their body weight issues just by eating properly. As we said above, raw fruits, raw organic veg, and organ meats, and not just organ meats, but the ruminant meats. I'm saying so. Yeah, don't consume fast and processed foods. Sugar, lay off your coffee. You should not be having several coffees a day. I have one coffee a week at most. Sometimes I'll go a month without coffee, or 2 months. But typically my coffee is once a week. Saturday morning, I'll have one. um, don't try not to be a slave, right? Don't support equality. Equality is the most retarded, anti-meritocratic idea. We're not all equal, and we need to recognize who is more meritorious, right? But of course, with the whole system, I mean, we live in such a corrupted system because now people would be like, oh, well, if we're going to have a meritocracy, then we need the experts in charge. And that means we need to put the climate change experts in charge because they're the most meritocratic climate change people. Oh, and they say that we need to remove all the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. And so you see, the whole concept of meritocracy has now just been destroyed by this expert class. So it's a real problem, actually. And I wrote about this when a long time ago, like 10 years ago, when they were trying to form Illuminism groups. I said, there's a real problem with identifying meritocracy, with identifying who can be meritocratic leaders because of this. How are you going to define it objectively? Because we have all these subjective human concepts, scientific materialism, uh, Abrahamism, religion, and then this climate change stuff, right? Oh, we need the most meritocratic climate change scientist to be in charge of climate change policy, and well, that's going to be let's remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and blot out the sun. That's the most meritocratic thing to do, and then boom, you've destroyed all life because you know everyone thought that was the most so, meritocratic thing to do. So of course that's of course why Hockney spent so much time rubbishing science and identifying the problems, the philosophical problems with scientific materialism. And so that's a tough nut to crack because who how are you going to outside of someone like me who's spent 15 years working on that problem of how you do identify what is meritocratic in science. Most people can't handle that. They're just not equipped intellectually. Not to insult people, but just most people haven't had the time to spend on it, like I have, right? Um, yeah. So anyway, don't be childless and unmarried. Get married and have good, healthy, good pedigree, high pedigree children. And don't tolerate everything. Right? This modern trend of tolerance of everything is obviously just well, it's just irrational because now you have to tolerate the totally irrational, right? There is this one saying, what is it? The most intolerant wins. Actually, that was some statement that someone realized that actually works. Um, the most intolerant is the one who seems to actually win, right? Because the people who in our society are actually the most intolerant people, and they seem to have all the power, right? And that does get you power. If you are totally intolerant towards everyone else and you have the power to do so, well, yeah, you win, right? So, I mean, don't tolerate everything. I mean, why would you tolerate everything? We are expected to tolerate everything that is completely opposite of our own interests now, right? Of our own health and well-being, right? And how is that what you're supposed to do, right? How is that good for society? It's not. It's not actually, right? So tolerances went way too far. I said I would end on this. LGBT, so sex versus gender. So sex, if you consider the human body and in the context of the biological world it comes from, it's clear that the design has a purpose. If you look at all animals, it's even plants. Plants even have the stamen and the pistil. They have the pollen and the thing that receives the pollen, right? Um, so it has a purpose. What's the purpose of that? Survival with opportunity for evolutionary variation through genetic mixing, right? Genetic mixing between the seed and the germ, or however you would phrase that, the germ, the semen, and the egg, right? Uh, from the male and the female aspects, give opportunity for mixing of genetics, which allows for variation, which allows for the basic process of evolution. Now, whether or not that's just, obviously scientists call that random. Obviously, we've indicated that, there's possibility, there's room for mind that's pre-existent to our universe that's actually operating on that variation and having can be having some influence there, testing, right? Mind can be operating on that. Of course, in my first book, remember I talked about a situation that because how do you identify if mind is working in nature, right? The laws of physics, for example, the gravitational force law. Force equals, capital G times big M times little m over r squared. The gravitational force law. Most of our laws, Ohm's law, most of our laws, and all of our laws in physics and equations in physics are just static equations. There's no indication of life. What do you have to see life? What is an indication of life? An indication of life would be change, would be the equations modifying themselves, but you would never expect the usual equations that we have to modify themselves. But the thing is, you have to have an understanding of the way reality is actually functioning at the base level to know where to look for mind. And so through this logical conceptualism, ontological mathematics, and you understand that um, our reality manifests through this Fourier transform from the pre-existent domain to the physical domain. There's a Fourier transform. Well, that's where you would expect actually to see mind in operation, is in that transform. And that's what I showed in my book, in my first book, in the context of this other research I was doing in climate change, but it relates to thermodynamics and this one simple thermodynamic light trap scenario and how the physics of that works. And I saw that, oh wow, the equation governing this state needs to modify itself in order to manage the physics of how that process works. Depending on conditions, it has to autonomously modify itself. Well, that's what you'd expect of life. Life autonomously modifies itself to changing conditions, adapts to changing conditions. So I found, an example of an equation of physics modifying itself in real time, having to modify itself in real time in order to manage this physics scenario. So that is where you would find how you would find mind in physics and operating behind the scenes, running this reality, right? And that was the mind of this manager, effectively the mind of, some people call it source, some people call it I am, but it's the manager of the universe. Neat. Hey, anyway, wow, how'd I get there? But I'm glad I brought that back up. Yes, because of evolution. Yeah, whether or not mind is behind that. Right. Yeah, no, there is room. Certainly through quantum mechanics, through that Fourier transform, there is room for mind to be managing, governing, directing in some loose way, at least, the process of variation in genetics and evolution. Variation and survival of the fittest would effectively be. It's very similar to Darwinianism. It's just being mediated by a mind that's probing and testing how to do it behind the scenes, right? So in any case, with humans, the act of sex becomes recreational, and a debate can be had at that level, including defining the act of sex itself and what constitutes it. For example, is what gay men do together sex? Would you define that as sex? Could it be defined as sex? Some people would say it's not sex, right? Would you define masturbation, for example, as sex? Is masturbation sex? Most people probably wouldn't say masturbation is sex, right? Even if you're, say, watching pornography or something, you're not having sex, right? So, um, is what you're doing with another man sex, or is it closer to masturbation, right? If sex is about what a male and female do together, and especially if there's subtle energy exchanges that actually happen in that process, because um, some people say, as I've said, that the human body is an energy transfer process, and when you have sex with a woman, there is a transfer of energy from the man's body to the woman's body on a spirit. It's not just the transfer of matter and material. There is a spiritual, energetic transfer that happens as well. And so, if that's what sex is and what it's defined for and designed for spiritually on the spiritual level, that probably isn't what would happen the same way when two men are sharing an orgasm or orgasm with each other or whatever, right? So who knows? Anyway, that's a debate that could be had. In general, it could be said that the form has a function. So the form of sex and of your genital organs, right, have a function. In the context of biology and plants and animals, that function is for genetic survival. Selfish gene theory. That process and that form, that design, is meant for genetic variation for the purpose of evolution and future survival, right? So if for humans sex can be recreational, then other genders and activities can be defined, which, as we know that they have done, which entirely decouple and detach from the form and function principle. So it's no longer about form and function, biological form and function. They're just going to do whatever the hell they want, right? So why does this create such controversy? Simple. It's just because the form has become divorced from the function, right? So if traditionally we would have defined the form of the good as, a perfectly defined male, with the form, the biological form matching the mental and his spiritual function, what he wants to do, and then same with a woman, and the perfect form for those two designs is for them to come together to reproduce, because that's what it's for, is for reproduction with genetic variation. If that's what it's for, then that would be considered good form. So when you have a detachment from good form, well, then people are instinctually, I think, just not going to feel comfortable with that or like that, right? Um, Now the thing is, if it becomes prevalent, it triggers a concern about survival viability in the future. So if it's becoming a mass phenomenon, it's natural for people to wonder why and become uncomfortable with it. Why is non-reproductive sex becoming such a mass phenomenon, right? And then you might ask, is it an environmental toxin problem that's disrupting the connection between the form and the function? Is there some environmental toxin which is making the expression of the form not go to where that function would have traditionally been or normally been defined at, in terms of the biology, right? Is it a nutritional problem? Is there a nutritional deficiency? Is there a parasite present, in the herd? In the context itself as gene theory, you're concerned about future existence, future survival. So if there's a mass movement towards non-reproductive sex, you have to wonder what's happening to the species. Is it environmental, nutrition? Is it parasitical infestation? What is it? Because if it went too far, right, there wouldn't be enough reproduction, right? Because genes ultimately want to reproduce. So that's just a basic, simple overview on why that concern, or why that issue becomes, a concern. Most people aren't thinking about it in terms like this. And one thing you could define, you could say that the end result of evolution is to perfect heterosexuality, right? Some people have posited that, becoming means that everyone becomes trans, because that would be the perfected state. Well, the question is, how do trans, once you've removed your gonads, if you've been castrated or had your ovaries and uterus removed, the question is, how are you going to reproduce, right? Pretty basic, simple question. How do you reproduce in that state? If left to natural devices, natural evolution would seem to want to produce perfected heterosexuality over time, simply because the offspring and the genetic forms, the expressions where the form is not matching perfectly with the function, eventually those ones, over time, those ones aren't the ones that are reproducing, right? Gay men obviously are not reproducing babies, and gay women are obviously not making babies, right? The people who are making babies are high testosterone men with good match between form and function, and then same with obviously women who are attracted to such men, and feminine men who are capable of bearing babies, which means they're feminine women, right? So over time, that's who preferentially is always going to produce the next generation, right? Gay people are never going to produce the next generation. That will simply never happen. It will never happen that two men produce, because it's physically impossible, obviously, right? You need the sperm and the egg, right? You need the sperm and the egg. So if it's via natural means, of course, we can do artificial things, and of course that might change everything. But if it was left to natural devices, right, the natural process, then it seems to me that heterosexuality becomes perfected over time. You get perfected heterosexuality rather than um, the other direction of a perfected transgenderism. I just don't see how that works without testicles and without ovaries. If you've removed those from your bodies, you're not reproducing. I mean, that's a pretty basic sort of quote unquote Darwin Award type situation. Okay, anyway, thought I'd end on that just for fun. But wow, holy cow, what a distance. What a distance did we cover? Well, let me see. Spirit plankton? Yeah. Rise above animal instincts to be closer to Godhead? Yeah, maybe. Thank you just for the Wikipedia. This. Oh, thanks, Lumina. Loci, great. But yeah, possibly. Yeah, good. All right, cool, guys. Yeah, I can make myself big on the screen for a sec. you want me to be bigger. There. Anyway, I'll just hang out for another few minutes in case you guys want to chat about anything. But how long was that? About an hour and a half? Yeah. Yeah, so I'll put this one back up. I'll maybe edit it and put it as a main video, so it's with the main video uploads rather than hidden away in the live tab. Um, yeah, I'll do that. So anyone, any questions? Any concerns? Any thoughts? How do you mean thoughts about those things? Yeah, I mean, you should do those things for sure. Well, yeah, I mean, it was pretty clear, I think, to me eventually, well, almost right away, that to be Illuminati, to actually meet the Illuminati, the way to do that is by becoming an adept at astral traveling. I think that's the big secret there. That's where they are. That's how you meet them and become one of them. You don't actually have to be me and have you know, mathematical skill and ability to produce, you know, and summarize everything that I have in my books, you know, and they made it clear that it wasn't about that, despite them talking all about ontological mathematics. They said in one of their books that that is not actually how you become Illuminati. Um, and there was just lots of other, I'll just say lots of other indications and summaries, which made it pretty clear that it was through astral travel and yeah, OBE, out of body experience. That was how you actually met them and became them, and that gets you on the road to gnosis as well, to get you escape from the reincarnational cycle. Yeah, so you should do those things for sure. Yeah, good, Lee. Good. Yeah, I do rewatch. I think I did a fairly good job. I've only practiced a little bit. Um, do you get their emails through Astro Travel? Yeah, maybe. It's funny. Oh, sorry. I'm getting over a cold. That's funny. Yeah, just a little bit, Lee, just to see what it was about, and probably I'm really looked down upon by them because I didn't go through completely with it and fully engage and commit to that. It was probably you know, I still could at some point, but perhaps I'm talking about it too much now, and it wouldn't work out the same way that it would have. Who knows? Whatever, right? But enough to see that it's real. Yeah. How come, Lee? Why do you see that? Yeah, I put it in my book too. In my book Illuminism, there's more there on it too, Lee, if you wanna read it, or if you want a bit of a summary, better in-depth summary on the philosophy and how it works. But you know, I watch a lot on YouTube of videos and professors and physicists and philosophers, and you know, and I watch a lot of it, and I see them. They're all just beating around the bush, you know, dealing with the concept of nothing, but then they get sidetracked, or dealing with the fine tuning, and then they get off into, you know, needing to worship something for some reason. Um, and just everyone is, and then like those two quotes from the beginning, those two jokes from the beginning of the show of the live stream. Everyone is just beating around the bush, and they never quite quite get there. Illuminism is the only thing that has gotten there, that has tied it together, and because that's a huge problem, right? And I mean, it's not unjustified because I mean, what the hell is nothing? No one would ever think of making something out of nothing. That seems like it's impossible. But well, in fact, Hegel figured it out, and uh, and Leibniz figured it out, and it is all figured out in the intellectual tradition. It is all actually there in the European intellectual tradition. But with Illuminism, that's the first time where it's been condensed and put all into one place, and every aspect and thread explained and tied together and shown what's left in this theory of ontological mathematics and how we can explain something coming from nothing, um, and how it is all mathematical and how it is all ideal, meaning of mind. That's the first time it's been done. And then in Illuminism, I basically, in my book Illuminism, I basically condense it huge. Like they have millions and millions of, I don't know what it is now, 20 million words, all their books. And I basically put it into what, a few thousand? Not a few thousand words, that's an essay. A small book. Anyway, my book Illuminism isn't that big, it's a small book, right? Um, the rise of the mutual master nation, as you explained it, raised my dues before. Yeah, not a lot of love in the community's instant growth. Yeah, I mean, it was always on. It was always difficult online, wasn't it? A lot of mental illness, and certainly I expressed a lot of my own mental illness online in the early days. It's pretty bad. But anyway, here we are, and I think what I did with the climate stuff too, and exposing that was really important. Yeah, instant gratification culture. Yeah, exactly. Sex is about instant gratification. That's all it is. There's no purpose. People aren't even thinking, well, the purpose of sex is about reproduction because that's about genetics, because that's about evolution, because that's about you need to have children in the future for humans to be in the future. It seems like when I've talked to LGBT and gay people before, they're not thinking about that at all. They're just like, how do I have an orgasm instantly right now as quick as I can and in as many different ways, and that's just like the only thing they're thinking about. It seems like. Yeah, addiction, not culture. Right. Okay, guys. Well, I'm going to give it to, let's say I have 9:03 right here. I'll give it to 9:10, and then I'll log off. All right. So anyway, anything else anyone wants to bring up, we can discuss. Yeah, more live streams. Yeah, people seem to seem to like the live stream format for sure. Yeah, I really didn't give this one any notice. I had it planned in my mind from the beginning of the week, so since last Monday, and I just never bothered um, to advertise for it. I only put up a notification for it a few hours ago. So yeah, maybe we'd have had more people show up. But anyway, this was good too. I can still just upload this as a video to the uploads, so it's fine. Why do you say that, Boomy? Oh, things aren't coming along. Not from the public, not from anyone else. I'm trying to figure out how to just fund it myself, uh, just through my own work and business ventures. I guess maybe we'll see, or maybe not at all. Maybe it'll just get forgotten for now. Be picked up in a future life or something, or by someone else. Maybe someone else can leverage it in the future. Okay, thanks, Lee. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah. Whether you have my email or however you'll message or just through YouTube or whatever. Yeah, I'll get to it. Well, thanks for coming on, you guys who did. Thanks for interacting. Yeah, there's a 30-second to 1 minute delay, it seems like. You can set that latency in the settings, but I like to keep the video quality as high as possible because of all the text that I show. And so that makes the longest latency between what I say and between your guys' responses and my responses to what you guys say. It's like 30 seconds to a minute. There's a new book series by Jason Glowney, first book called Arithmal. We're trying to comprehensively cover all the math. Okay. Yeah, all right. So Boomy says because maybe people need religion, where certain personality types do. Well, I mean religion in the context of a worshiping type of religion. Yeah, many people maybe they do just need that. Their personality types need it, or at least they find great accord with it um, in that sort of sense. Um, but obviously, a lot of people do live without it, right? INTJs generally aren't Abrahamists religious that way, right? Have you read that book series much yet, Lumina? Who are they saying that they are? Whoever's writing that. Is it on Amazon? Oh, I see. Okay. Oh, it's a big one. $100 for a paperback. Holy cow. Interesting. Cool. I'll have to take a look at that. Yeah, you need a spiritual backbone. Yeah, for sure. You do, Boomy. Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, people like Nietzsche and many others have questioned whether or not Christianity could ever furnish a spiritual backbone. A worshipful religion could. A lot of people conclude negatively about that. Um, so yeah, yeah. Of course, then you have Plato's Republic, right? Yeah, so Glowney wants to fund an institute for teaching ontological mathematics. Yeah, of course, and that's what I wanted in combination with, doing research and stuff like that. Exactly. Yeah, that's good. Really neat. Okay, well, guys, that's 10 after. I'll just let you guys all confirm that you're good to go. I'll give you a second just to say bye. All right. So I'll say bye first. Thanks for coming, everybody. It's 10 after 9 here for me, so I should get going. I've been on here for over an hour and a half now. Should go get a tea or something. Anyway, so thanks, Lumina, Boomy, Lee, anyone else that I may have missed. Right, good night. Okay, take care.